Hello and welcome to the Too Much Apparently podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast for the deeply feeling, overthinking, emotionally overloaded humans who've been told they're too much apparently. And if you're back, thanks for choosing to sit with us again.
We're Alice and Carly, two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
Okay, on with the episode. In this episode, we're talking about the contradiction between feeling both too much and not enough at the same time. We will explore what too much looks like, why we assume we are too much, how we then end up feeling like not enough, and how ultimately we can begin to make peace with our muchness.
So, Carly, how has hearing you're too much and feeling not enough shaped who you are as a person?
One of the great things about this episode and the things that we are going to be exploring is where the whole idea for the podcast came from, isn't it? All episodes are going to feel deeply personal to us both. The first episode was just a sort of introducing what this podcast is going to be about. And now suddenly we're asking each other, and I guess anyone listening, these deep questions. So I feel like I just want to acknowledge that the first thing that comes up for me when you ask me that question is a bit like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah, it's real.
Yes, it's real. And we're going to be openly talking about these things for ourselves. And that's what's ultimately going to end up being really great about this. And I'm nervous, but excited. So back to your question. Hearing I'm too much and not enough and how that shaped me as a person. One of the first things that comes to mind for me when I think about the word too much and how often I've heard the word too much in general, not in my life, but just as a concept overall. At first, it wasn't something I overly related to, and perhaps because I took the too much of it literally, because I don't think I've ever actually been told, Carly, you're too much. That's not been explicit and that direct in my life. There certainly have been sort of other people, family-wise, who I have heard that directed at, but I kind of experienced it quite differently. So I don't know about anybody listening, but when I think about the word too much, what comes up in my mind is perhaps people who are really loud or chatty, been told that they're annoying or needy. Like when I think of too much, they're some of the words that come up for me, and they're not words that, I relate to or that have been shared with me before. So I think that's why I potentially didn't relate to the whole too much side of things. But for me, the too much, it was there, but it was silent. It was the hidden messaging behind other things that were said to me. So the kind of two words that I have definitely been told a lot in my life are things like too intense, too quiet, that was a big one, too emotional, too caring, and the biggest one, too sensitive. Yeah, that came up. That came up a lot. So just all of the twos really. And I kind of think of all of those things as sort of sitting under the umbrella of too muchness.
Yeah.
That's the subtext behind a lot of those things. So it's only more recently that I realized, no, I absolutely relate to the too muchness, because that has basically what I've been told for a lot of my life.
Yeah, just not directly.
Yes, just not directly. But you asked about the impact. Just thinking of that now. For me, ultimately, the impact was to just shrink as a person, to make myself smaller. So to always make sure I must get it right, be the good girl. I don't share my opinions in case I get that wrong. I don't speak up. Don't enter into conflict. And so ultimately, people pleasing, perfectionism in terms of my way of being in the world, lots of self-monitoring, lots of self-editing. Yeah, I think it also fed into sort of trying to achieve highly as well, particularly academically. I don't know if it was a way of channeling the muchness in a way that's more acceptable. I'm not sure. But I think for me, if I was to sort of summarize how it developed, it was kind of that classic push-pull between then not now wanting to be seen and sort of be a bit invisible, but also desperately wanting to be seen. So all of those words that I've been told over many, many years, they're there in ticking along in the background of my mind. And don't get me wrong, they're not as loud as what they used to be. They are a lot quieter, but they've not gone away. They're still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I said a lot there.
That's good. It's good to hear about how it's been for you. And I feel like for me it's been quite different. My experience has been that more traditional, too much kind of, image as you say it. And listening to you, what I notice is the kind of struggle between parts of myself. So the part of me that goes, yeah, I am this much and I'm proud to be this much and this is how I'm going to be and you're not going to shrink me. And then another part that's like, oh no, but I really just want you to like me. And a consistent pattern for me has been that even after that initial kind of in the moment, this is who I am, the kind of shrinking back afterwards and withdrawing and analyzing and over analyzing. How didn't they understand? Why didn't they understand me? Why are they perceiving me or responding to me in this way? Like this is just normal, isn't it? Like I'm just being normal.
Is that what
But
you
yeah.
thought even when you were younger?
Yes, I think I did. I don't think I would have been able to articulate it. I don't think it was so much in my conscious mind, but certainly that sense of I'm sure I'm just saying something really straightforward here. Surely how I'm feeling in this moment is understandable and being met with a lot of confusion. So yeah, that kind of the withdrawing and like I say, the over analyzing, which inevitably became self-blame of what's wrong with you. And as I've gone through my life, that's got worse as I've seen it repeated in other people. If it happens with one person, it's like, oh well, maybe we just disagree. But when it's then happens with more people and more people and more people, certainly my experience, and it's certainly kind of experience of people that I work with, that feeling of I'm the common denominator, it must be me that's the problem, that can be really painful to live with, feeling like it is me that's the problem, which then leads to desperately seeking a solution, whether that's trying to feel less and, yeah, just be less, or trying to desperately convince the other person to see things from my perspective. Just lots of efforts to be different. And I'm trying to sort of hunt around in my mind for what I mean specifically when I say that. But I guess I mean anything that falls under an attempt to be something other than how I naturally am. And those attempts can be quite frantic and inevitably fail. And then just being left with that feeling of, I don't like to use this term anymore, but the word that comes up for me is crazy. I can't recall anybody directly saying that to me, but definitely I've definitely had people in the past try and label me with personality disorders in an attempt to help me.
Right.
So absolutely have come away with that sense of I'm the problem, I'm crazy, and I need to be doing something different. And just very alone in that, just feeling really alone, which I think was, to go back to what you were saying about where this podcast came from and why we're doing it, is certainly through our friendship, is that recognition that really not alone, and how good it's been to really share that with you on a deep level and wanting to share that with other people, even like outside of therapy, that actually there's loads of us. Actually, there's loads of us that are secretly, silently wondering, is it me? Am I too much? Yeah.
I really hope we can somehow get like a little community of too much people,
Yeah.
or whatever we call
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
together. That the idea of that feels really nice.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, isn't it? Having that community of people, just
I
not
was
feeling alone in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about what you said and almost thinking about some of the shared commonality in our experiences, but also the differences. And I'm not too sure if you describe it like this, so do correct me, but I kind of heard that when you were younger, you sort of given those messages, but it almost sounded like there was a confused but also little defiant part that was a little bit like, hey, like, hang on a minute, I'm just being me. But then over time and the more
Yeah.
interactions you had, it kind of started to wear that
Mhm.
down and
Yeah.
then, shame hole.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I was almost shame hole immediately and just stayed there.
Mm.
It just got reinforced. But I couldn't help I don't know, some like real sadness came up that you had that defiant part that was like, hang on, like what are you talking about? I'm just me.
Mm,
That was there, but actually
yeah.
people eroded that away.
Yeah, it does feel sad. I think my main feeling when I think about that part of me is I just feel really proud of it. I just feel really proud of that part of me. I'm really glad that I have that part of me. And I'm still trying to navigate it. I think sometimes my default can be to go into kind of fight mode and be really sure of like, no, this is definitely how it is. So having to take the energy from her and also hone that a bit to, I suppose how I word it now is to respond from an adult place. But what I think about is to respond to situations rather than reacting to situations. That actually, the more that I've been able to validate this part of me and appreciate and value this part of me, even in the face of being told I'm too much in various ways, the less I go into that fight space.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I also feel really glad that you had her. And it was nice to hear you say you feel proud of her. I was like, I feel proud of
Mm,
her too.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, thinking about what we're talking about, why do you think we've been told these things by others? We've both just shared how actually these things were sort of repeated to us by multiple people over multiple years. So, why have we been told this so much in our lives?
So I fairly recently had the realization. So, like I was saying before, that kind of desperate attempt to get it right and not be too much, realized that the people that had been implying in different ways that I was being too much weren't very good at handling their emotions. So I'd been telling myself for a long time, you're too emotional, you're too reactive, you're too this, that, and the other. And I just had a moment of like, oh, these people aren't dealing with their emotions. They're not accessing them at all. So, what I see personally and in the people around me is that when someone is being told that they are too much in some way, that often there is someone in their lives that is not able to handle, like, not able to handle their own emotion, not able to handle the other person's emotion. So rather than whatever the problem is being resolved between the two people, that someone will go, that's not my problem, that's your problem. You deal with it. This is making me feel uncomfortable. Take it away. That's definitely a pattern that I notice. What do you
When
think?
well, first I'm curious about when did you pick up on that? When did you start to notice perhaps this isn't about me, perhaps this is about them?
Yeah, it was actually, well, I feel like I've had various levels of realizing this. I can't even remember specifically when or even who it was, but it was really recently. Like it was in the last year, 18 months of going through another round of I'm finding this relationship painful and trying really hard to resolve the issues in this relationship and being quite confused with those same loops of is it me? It must be me that's the problem. This always happens to me. It must be me. And then I don't know, just something just kind of clunked into place of like, this person isn't handling emotions in the way that I am aiming to handle my emotions anymore. That actually I'm aiming to face into emotions, face into the difficult things in relationships and address things instead of trying to sweep things under the rug.
It sounds a little bit like the more work that you've done on yourself and the more self-aware that you've become and then the more connected to your emotions, it makes you realize, when other people haven't done that work sort of
Yes.
for themselves. And so it kind of sounds like that started to pave the way and then over time more and more for you to realize, oh, actually maybe this isn't about me.
Yeah. And I think a big message that I got when I was a young adult was that I wasn't taking enough responsibility. And so that's been a constant undercurrent in the work that I have done on myself is about taking personal responsibility. And that was the kind of moment of realization was I've worked really hard to take responsibility for things and realized that the people that were accusing me of not taking responsibility for things were also not taking responsibility. And I think there's something really important here about not setting up one person as okay and the other person as not okay. I really don't think it's as simple as that a lot of the time. But I think what it does come down to is compatibility. That
Yes.
I'm sure there's some metaphor out there somewhere about being a pint glass person or a teacup person. Does that sound familiar to you?
I know that metaphor in terms of how much someone has to offer and give.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the way I understand that metaphor.
Yeah. So I think about it in terms of emotional capacity as well. That some people are comfortable with going really deep and thinking about things a lot and wanting to face into difficulties and be curious and all of that. And some people don't want that.
Would the deep people be the pint glass people?
Yes. Yeah. So the deep people are the pint glass people. And, it boggles my mind that there are some people out there that don't want to go to therapy and work on themselves because obviously I think therapy is great.
They're an
Um,
espresso cup.
they are. Yeah. But yeah, that there are people out there that don't want to do that, that don't have that same interest in emotional expression, I guess. And that is also fine. They're probably just not my kind of people.
Yes. I also want to say I'm very aware that I say espresso, not espresso. I refuse to change it. I've
Stand
always
by
said
it.
espresso.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, I like that. Also, pint glasses are a bit boring. Can we be something a bit nicer?
Yeah. I don't
A bit
drink beer,
prettier.
so
I
yeah.
don't drink beer.
So it doesn't quite fit, but yeah, I guess and also I wouldn't fit in a pint glass, but I need something bigger than that, much bigger.
Bigger. We're
Yeah.
we are a very pretty decorated vase.
Hmm.
Mm.
Well, another way that I think about it, and another way that I often talk about it, is in terms of a swimming pool. So I see it as lots of people will just enjoy swimming in the swimming pool and they'll get in and out of the pool kind of as needed. And then there'll be other people that never come off the sunbed. They just lie under the umbrella, maybe reading a book or whatever. And the way that I see myself is more like there's a special section of the pool that goes really deep, like so deep that you need scuba equipment, like right at the bottom. That's where you'll find me. Yeah. And I could come up to the surface and I like to lie on a sunbed and read a book from time to time. But where I feel most comfortable is really deep down in those depths.
So it's a
Yeah.
bit like in swimming lessons as a kid where they drop the thing to the bottom and you have to dive deep,
Yeah.
deep, deep down to
Yeah.
retrieve it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Where would
nice
you see
thing,
yourself
oh, I'm
in
with
that?
you. I'm on the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with
Hmm.
you. I'm on the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're doing handstands.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Oh no, it's interesting sort of listen to you talk about that. And I think it'll be really great later to maybe come onto a theory a little bit about maybe why these things occur. But for me, I've almost forgotten what question it was. Now that I asked you something about why did they tell us
Yeah.
that we were
Why do
this
people
way?
do this?
If I was to answer this question from a historical place, so from sort of an inner child place, and I feel it's important that I answer from there because it's not actually history, it still lives in me now. So that part of me would answer that question. They told me that I was too much because it was true, because I do need to change. It's not okay to be this way.
Mm.
The problem is with me. But for many years, there is this other part now that says, well, what if it's not me? What if it's them? So I think in therapy, for anyone that has been in therapy or maybe has done a lot of self-reflection, you start to realize that the actions and behaviors of other people are often about the other person
Yeah.
and not about us. And so can that also be true in this instance? When people are saying you are all the twos, could it also be possibly true that actually this is about them,
Mhm.
not about us? So over time, I just started to realize that, okay, perhaps this can be true there as well. Perhaps they feel uncomfortable with my way of being in the world, and their discomfort doesn't have to mean that I'm the one who's
Mhm.
wrong.
Yeah.
And I do think it's important to acknowledge what you say. That's not me saying that they're the ones that are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just important to hold space for sort of that. Why is it always us that feel like we're the ones who are wrong? And I do think the reason that some people might say it to us is from an unintentionally sort of harmful space from a loved one, a parent that says you're too caring or you're too sensitive. The meaning behind that could be, I care about you and it hurts me to see you hurting. So I would like you to be stronger in the
Yeah.
world, of course, however you define strength. So I think sometimes it's not always being critical, isn't always the intention of
Mm-hmm.
perhaps sort of a parent or a loved one. But of course, that is how we end up hearing it. I think people can say it from an unintentional place, not realizing how we hear that and the damage that can cause.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it can also go all the way to being intentionally harmful, where saying that becomes weaponized, where it can, especially in relationships, where it can then be used to gaslight and shut us down,
Yeah.
make out that we're the dramatic, over the top, as you said, crazy
Mm-hmm.
ones,
Yeah.
in a way that can be sort of really harmful.
Yeah. And what I often say to people that I work with is for them to let go a little bit of why the person's saying it, like to not get caught up in blaming the other person for saying those things. Because I think that can be a real stopper to the healing, but to focus on what the impact has been of the thing that's been said, that whether somebody was being intentionally hurtful or not, that the impact of being told you're to whatever can, do long lasting damage. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I can't help but wonder, we keep talking about who is wrong, but I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say, "Oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be real enough? Oh, why did I make a joke there instead of being vulnerable? Like, missed a moment there."
Mhm.
Why
Yeah.
do we not hear that? Why are we always thinking that it must be us?
Yeah. But I think this is where I think about the impact of society. And I think therapy has a reputation for being, oh, it's about your mum, usually. But it's wider than that, So maybe it starts with your parent or your caregiver, but we need to think about where did that parent get their ideas from? And I think the stuff that we're learning is fairly new. And I've just been thinking recently about emotional intelligence being a new kind of, I don't know if this is the right word, but like currency in the workplace. Like it's more important than it used to be. I don't think people have realized the impact of the things they say until fairly recently. This might seem a bit of a jump to go to, but the way that I think about it is it's only recently that we've recognized what PTSD is. I say recently. I know it's from the First World War, but that's kind of where it come from. And from understanding PTSD, we've gained more understanding about trauma, and that was originally focused on big, maybe obvious traumas like wars, car crashes, and so on. But as that work has developed, we've also begun to recognize other forms of trauma and relational trauma. And so, without any of this, if we go back to our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, they didn't realize the impact that they were having. It just feels like a throwaway comment, like to go back to what you were saying about the unintentional harm that our parents' generation and before that wouldn't have recognized the impact of saying, it makes me sad to see you sad. They wouldn't have been able to recognize that as shutting anything down or making anybody feel too much because nobody was talking about it. Whereas now, therapy is more common, and particularly therapists being on social media and mental health being talked about on social media, there are more and more of these ideas. I feel like I've slipped down a rabbit hole and I can't find my way back out now.
Well, I think it's an important rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It speaks a lot to the current climate, particularly around mental and emotional health, well-being. Yeah, the term generational trauma, like that's not that old as a term or a concept. It's still pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of sounds like what you were saying is that in present day, more and more awareness of these things and the impact language can have on another person, just in a way that, wasn't there previously. And therefore, our parents and parents, they didn't have that. They weren't to know.
Yeah, they're like,
No.
without that additional knowledge, there's no option to go, oh, maybe this isn't me.
Yeah.
You're just stuck in that feeling of this is not how people should be. People should be that keep calm and carry on, stiff upper lip kind of
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
often refer back to the British keep calm and carry on.
Yeah.
Like, I want to put that in the bin.
Yeah. Yeah. Be really interesting to hear more about people from other countries where emotional expression is more accepted and
Yeah,
how that plays out there.
absolutely.
What are the labels that you hear the most? The two labels that you hear the most.
So the first one that immediately comes to mind is the too quiet. I feel like, when people say, if I had £1 for every time someone, said this, I'd be maybe this is actually true in this case. No, probably not that much. But too quiet was a dominant feature. Whether it's just someone commenting, just being like, oh, you're quiet, aren't you?
Mhm.
Really don't know what you're supposed to say to that. Like, yes.
Mhm.
Or are you okay? You're being quiet. So again, what you're taking from that is this makes me seem like I'm not okay, or I'm not enjoying myself, or I'm not having a good time. So it then puts pressure on, because you don't want someone to say that to you again. Oh, so now I have to perform. Now I have to make sure my face is doing a certain thing, or
Yeah.
I am not being too quiet and trying to get involved. And then comes the pressure in your own mind to
Mm.
speak, speak, speak.
Mhm.
And yeah, so this reminds me of introversion and extroversion, and how socially extroversion is a more desirable trait. Perhaps that's why people comment on quietness, because again, you don't hear people say, oh, you're loud, aren't you? Are you okay? You're being a bit loud. It's not something that you kind of hear people comment on. So quietness, definitely. And then I felt wrong for being quiet. It's not okay to be quiet. Too sensitive, as I said earlier, that's the dominant one that came up all the time in lots of different ways. And the other one is too serious. Said, in lots of different ways, but essentially saying too serious. And I think that comes about because I'm someone, I'm very much aware of my morals, values, what I deem to be ethical and unethical in the world. And so I have strong views on social justice, on animal welfare, lots of political opinions about suffering in the world. And so sometimes it's hard for me that other people aren't always seeing those things, or are as passionately, hold sort of passionate beliefs around that. So when people are just casually talking about, like, hey, is anyone putting a bed on the horses? And then I'm like, maybe you should donate your money to a charity that actually works to stop horse racing.
Mm.
People just they don't want to hear that, do they? So then the response is, oh, there's the party pooper.
Mm.
And so people can sometimes just sort of make jokes or be like, oh, here we go.
Mm.
And I'm not even someone who gets, well, I don't know. This is maybe when I need to check in with myself and any blind spots. But what I'm going to say is I'm not like a warrior on these things. I'm not someone that schools people or educates people or shames people for what they do. It's not even like I'm getting on a soapbox and lecturing people for what they do. I'm often just making just a little bit of a comment just to make people aware. But I've learned people aren't always appreciative of that. But that used to bother me, and I used to didn't say anything.
Mhm.
Now I'm actually trying to experiment with starting to say those things a little bit again, and not caring if people say that I'm a party pooper, because like fine, like whatever. I don't care. Call me a party pooper. Oh yes, how terrible that I care about the welfare of living things. Like
Mhm.
I'm trying to be more okay with that.
Yeah. And that takes me back to what I was saying before about personal responsibility. That if somebody is saying, if you're going to put a bet on the horses, or, whatever that thing is, that it makes them check in with their own values and that discomfort around. And I'm not immune to this. I don't think anybody is. That moment of, oh yeah, I think I care about this thing, but oh, I am doing this thing and I don't want to think about that. So instead of responding with, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And yes, maybe I should think about that. That what you get met with is, like you say, don't be a party pooper, because then they get to distance themselves from that shame, from that emotion behind
Absolutely.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And just
Yeah.
it can just be helpful just to realize those things.
hmm Yeah, I think listening to what you were saying was making me think, it brought me back again to that thought of, but I'm just being normal. Like I'm not saying anything, wild. So the main one that comes up for me is too needy. That's the first one that comes into my mind. I do very much relate to too quiet, and it reminded me of a time where I just had my first child. She was about 4 months old, and I'd gone back to work in a nightclub, and I was working nights on the reception. And one of the guys that was working the bar came up to me once and he said, "You're really quiet. Are you religious?" I was just like,
Like,
no,
are you
I'm
taking
just
a vow of silence or something?
right. I was just sat there doing my job, taking payments from people and letting them in. That was really really strange. But yeah, too quiet's another one that I can relate to. But too needy is the main one. And again, as I look back over my life, what I see is people that weren't able to meet my needs. And it does feel good to be able to sit here now and really, really recognize, really feel it deeply in my body that I am not too needy. I potentially had bigger needs than the average person because earlier needs weren't met, because I'm neurodivergent and nobody knew, but the problem is not me. And well, that's strange. I was just going to say I'll defend that really strongly, but I also don't want to be a defensive person, but I have a strong boundary around that, is probably how I'd say it. That if anybody tries to make me feel like I am too needy, that I will strongly hold the line of, my needs might be overwhelming for you, and my needs are not too much in general. They're fine. They're just as they are.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love hearing you say that.
As I said earlier, a lot of the things that come to mind for me are things like taking things too personally, or being too opinionated, or too bossy. I was a great leader when I was in primary school. I was really comfortable with it, really kind of confident with it, and it's just been eroded. And I think that's something that a lot of little girls and a lot of women can relate to, this idea of being called too bossy, that no one really says that to men.
Hmm.
And too controlling is another one that it does feel a little bit awkward as I say it, probably because it is still something that is present in my life. I will naturally try to be in control of things. That's a kind of default setting for me. But even there's something now about recognizing that what's underneath too controlling is I can feel really scared in certain situations. And the way my brain responds to that is by trying to be in control in whatever way that looks like.
I relate to that a lot, the idea of being controlling. And I think it's important to separate that there's being controlling and there's being controlling.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, one more related to anxiety based, needing to feel in control,
Hmm.
which is different to being controlling in an attempt to control
Hmm.
other people.
Yeah.
Controlling.
Hmm. And I can even own that, as a young woman, I would actually put myself in the category of too controlling.
Hmm.
Um, that I was really so afraid of being abandoned that I would do things that I absolutely no longer think are appropriate. And again, being able to look at that past me with compassion, being able to hold the two things alongside, um that wasn't okay behavior, and that I was okay as a person, and what I needed was more support that I wasn't
Yes.
getting. I think another really common one that comes up for me, and I don't know if anybody has said this to me directly, and when I think about this, I really think about being at secondary school, but too weird. is one that comes up a lot for me. And I view this very differently now, kind of realizing that I'm autistic and being able to see why people might have seen me as weird, because people see autistic traits sometimes as weird. But that's definitely one that comes up a lot. Again, also with the people that I work with, this sense of just being not normal.
Were you told that you were weird, or did you feel that you were weird?
I can't think of any specific time that I was told that I was weird. And I've also had times where I absolutely haven't felt weird, or have actively told, or people have actively told me that I'm normal.
You're
But they just
normal, you are.
yeah,
You're a real normal
yeah.
person.
And then that part of me that we were talking about earlier is like, hang on a minute, I am not normal. But yeah, just that sense of being different to everybody else, of really getting it, not really understanding, I guess, particularly social interactions. Yeah, that's a big one that can come up.
Yeah.
So we've looked a lot at the too much part. What about the not enough part? How does that come up?
Well, it's strange, isn't it, how those two things actually go together, because they can feel like a contradiction, but they're not really. Because if you're too much of this thing, then it means you aren't enough of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you might, if, for example, you have it in your head that you are boring,
Mm-hmm.
then when you go to a party, you might, consciously or sort of unconsciously be trying to make sure that you look like you're having fun or you're having a good
Yeah.
time. Or
Mm-hmm.
like with my too quiet example, putting pressure on yourself to be enough chatty.
Yeah.
So I think then the not enoughness, well, firstly, that's kind of being told if you're too sensitive, then you're not strong enough, for
Yeah.
example. And so I think we can then end up trying to alter our behavior, edit our words, so that we then feel like we are enough, that we're enough for the people around us. And so that then we feel like we're enough in and of themselves. I know for me, that can have manifested by making sure that I'm looking fun and like I'm having a good time and I'm engaged, and someone might crack a joke that I don't understand and I'll just laugh anyway. Or some people that know me well know that that's my fake laugh. I get like this knowing look like, that was the fake laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I've done that enough to the extent that it's automatic. I don't consciously do it. It just happens. A couple of years ago, there was me and sort of a group of friends that had come round for like a barbecue or something in my garden, and they were talking about something, and I just totally zoned out, as I do, got distracted by a thought in my mind, and the next moment everyone was laughing. So without even thinking, I'm just finding myself laughing. And so then, my friend turns to me and said, "Oh, have you seen that episode as well?" And I just went, "No." I was just like, "No." And then suddenly everyone just twigged that I just laughed along. And I didn't even know what show they were talking about. That
Mm-hmm.
fact that others had seen it and laughed. I
Yeah,
just admitted it. I just went, "No."
that's funny.
In the past me would have tried to cover that up and pretended that, "Oh yeah, I did know." But no, now I was just like, "Yeah, no, I just zoned
Mm-hmm.
out. Don't really know why I was laughing."
Mm-hmm.
But really, I just like to not laugh, just be like, "Oh, I missed that. I zoned out." But I can't help it. It's automatically just happens now. So I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes these things just become so honed in the way in which we automatically response in a way that I guess our brain interprets it as safety. And so
Mm-hmm.
now it's automatic as a way to feel safe and accepted and sort of part
Mm-hmm.
of the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think when we're talking about being both too much and not enough, it's both of those things sort of then end up being true at once, where we're being told in one breath that we're too much, but the subtext of that is that we're not enough of this
Mm-hmm.
thing. So then we end up feeling ultimately not good enough.
Yeah. 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 And that somehow you've got to try harder to be different.
Yeah. But why do we think this sticks so much? Why don't we just brush it off when someone says, "You're too quiet, you're too sensitive, you're too needy"? Why do we absorb that in and not just brush that off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the way that I think about this is in terms of how our brains work as humans. So the first thing I think about when I think about why it's so hard to brush off is that the messages often come from people that we trust, or people that are in authority or somehow know better than us. And really what I think about is being a small child and being told something by your parents, and they must be right, because they're your parents. And then that might be reinforced by siblings as well. And that is just the way that our brains develop, the way that we get a sense of who we are, how we see ourselves as people comes from how other people respond to us. And I also think about our brains being wired for connection and safety. And so, what our brains will make us do is respond to whatever situation we're in by keeping those connections. And if that means changing who you are to fit in order to stay safe in that environment, then that is what we will do. So, and particularly as a child where you don't have this ability, the adult ability to rationalize and understand people and relationships, you don't have that ability to question, is it me? Is it the other person? Not really. And so this kind of brings me to rejection sensitivity. And I see a lot of people talking about this as specific to ADHD, but I think it's bigger than that. I think it shows up a lot in ADHD because people who are ADHD experience a lot of rejection in lots of ways over and over and over again, that our brains need to be aware of the fact that we might be rejected. I think about it on that evolutionary level of, long ago, if we were rejected and ejected from the tribe, that is a threat to life and death, and that our brains can still respond in that way. I think another important aspect of this is the shame of feeling like you're too much, or, however that shows up. It is silencing. So what happens is you will turn it over in your head, and it feels awful and it feels so shameful. You don't want to talk to anybody about it. So then there's no opportunity for anybody to correct or offer a different perspective or support. And it just becomes automatic. Like you were saying before, even though you were zoned out, part of your brain was ready to respond with a laugh when everybody else is laughing. We just have these kind of automatic processes then going on in our brain that until you do something differently, and obviously again I'll think about going to therapy, until you have that space to kind of pause and look at, actually, is it like this or is it like something else, and really get that deeply attuned connection with someone else who can value you just as you are. Yeah, getting that acceptance from other people. It's really hard to do that on your own, but we're not designed to do that on our own. We're designed to do that in relationship with other people.
Sounds like what you're saying is it sticks because of it going right back to when we're babies and young children, and the way in which children develop, in the stage that their brains are at that time, ultimately just means we're primed for that conditioning. And then once the conditioning's there, it's there, and it can take being able to step outside of yourself or feel valued in a relationship, as you were saying, for that conditioning to start to get unpicked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So given that we started a podcast called Too Much, apparently, all about being too much, and we're talking publicly about our experiences with that, we're obviously much more comfortable with it than we used to be. So I wonder for you, what has made that possible?
Good question. Yes, we are more comfortable with it than we used to be. I think it's important to share that. I do feel some discomfort even talking now in this podcast, putting that out there. But
Yeah.
again, that's kind of the point. This podcast in and of itself, like a declaration, sort of almost of, okay, we're here, we're doing this, we're accepting this. So you and I would probably say that we've made significant steps to moving towards acceptance, and dare I say it, even liking that we are this way.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been many years in the making. I am trying to lean more into just the truth that I am a sensitive person in the world. I just am. Therapy, of course, was a big help. I think I've just realized this is who I am. No amount of I should try to be more like this or I should be less of this. That's going to make me not me. I am me. So who cares if I am a quiet observer sometimes in social gatherings? So what if people think I'm boring just because I care deeply about certain things in the world or because I don't enjoy the kinds of things that they enjoy? Like maybe you're boring. It goes both ways though, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more proud of those parts of me. And, the funny thing is, I love it when I see other people who are like this in the world. I want to celebrate that. And it's like, I feel very deeply in my bones, yes, we need more of us.
Hmm.
The world needs more people like us, especially in influential decision-making spaces. So, if I can see that for others, then obviously it's got to be true for me too.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with everything, that you said there. And it's been a similar sort of process for me. And I think the bit that I would add on is sometimes the painful realization that certain relationships are just not right for me. That either we really can't see eye to eye on things, or they're not willing to value me for who I am, or there just isn't that compatibility, and having to let those relationships go. And I think that can be really scary to think about. It certainly would have been terrifying for me years ago to think about having to let go of certain relationships. And what I've noticed is, or what I found is that deciding not to continue that relationship creates a space. And the more I do that, the more I'm able to fill those spaces with people that actually fit with how I want to be and how I want to spend my time. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's what we want to leave you with today. If you're listening to this and thinking, yep, that's me, you're not alone. This space was literally made for the too much crowd.
You're not too much. You're probably just used to being in rooms that are too small for who you are.
And maybe this week, just notice how often do you shrink yourself preemptively? How often do you lead with an apology for who you are?
Not to fix it or change it, just to notice. Awareness is always the first step. Next time, we're talking about something that I know will resonate with a lot of you: too loud inside my head. What happens when your internal world feels chaotic and overwhelming?
We're diving into that experience of having thoughts, worries, and emotions all competing for space in your brain at the same time, when the noise inside feels louder than the world outside. Theme tune inserted here.
Great. That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.